Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scout Selections here for Saturday, August 17th. Before we get into today's play of the day, we'll quickly recap what happened yesterday. We picked up a very nice winner in the first inning with the Red Sox score first against the Baltimore Orioles, as we got that number at minus 115 on 5 dimes. They ended up winning the game. I believe it was 9-1, as Baltimore's terrible pitching once again reared its ugly head. But at the same point, Boston closed roughly a minus 275 favorite. And yet, since we got them to score first, we got them roughly minus 115 to give all of you some nice value to start the weekend with. Now, in terms of today's card, I already mentioned, or I previewed yesterday, that we'll be doing some preseason games for the plays of the day on Saturday and Sunday. And the play of the day that we're going to be looking at is going to be in a matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Rams. And this game's supposed to be taking place roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And in terms of this game, we actually like the Dallas Cowboys in the first half, minus 3.5, which is available at minus 101 on Pinnacle. Now, at first glance, this line was a bit higher than I originally anticipated. I thought it would be available at minus 3, but I still think the Cowboys were going to be able to cover the minus 3. And I think they should be able to cover the minus 3.5. Now, the main reason why we like the Cowboys to cover this involves the fact that the Rams will once again be showing how little they care about preseason, as they are resting the majority of their starters in the first half. And now this game will be taking place in Hawaii, as it's going to be a destination game in the preseason. And first of all, that means that there's going to be no home teams. B, that also means the fact that you already know who's going to be playing on the Rams and the Cowboys based on the fact that some of the players did not even travel to Hawaii. Specifically, Dak Prescott already made the trip. He did play week 1. He looked really solid in his only drive against the 49ers, as he ended up going 4 for 4 as he led the Cowboys to a field goal. Cooper Rush also looked pretty decent off the bench as the second-string quarterback, as he ended up going 16 of 26 for 142 yards. And Mike White went 9 of 20 for 87 yards. Mike White is terrible. I've already said that before, but he will not be playing in the first half, and that is a large reason why we are going to be taking the first half spread instead of the full game spread. Meanwhile, the Rams, it's already been determined that Jared Goff and Todd Gurley, as well as some other starters, didn't even go on the plane to Hawaii, so they will not even be in consideration to play at all in this game. And with Goff and Gurley out, that means one thing and one thing only, and that means an excess of Blake Bortles in the first half, as he is the second quarterback on the depth chart. And I don't think I really need to convince any of you on why that is definitely beneficial for the Cowboys to have Blake Bortles playing roughly 2 series minimum. I think that he should struggle again. I think Prescott should play well. Aaron Donald's status is also up in the air. Nobody really knows because of the fact that he was able to participate in all those joint practices during the week. In terms of the spread, I definitely think the Cowboys should be roughly a minus 3.5 point favorite, but I definitely think that at minus 101 at Pinnacle, I think you're getting a great value at close to even money on the Cowboys, who will be using their starting quarterback, whereas the Rams will be using Blake Bortles as the backup quarterback, plus the fact that most of their starters did not even make the trip to Hawaii. And you're going to be looking at a Rams team that only scored 3 points entirely against the Raiders in week 1 of the preseason, as their team looked completely disinterested. And the Cowboys were winning after 3 quarters of their game before Mike White came in, and they ended up losing 10-0 in the fourth quarter, which is why they ended up losing by 8. Overall, Cowboys are a better unit. The Rams opened up on the spreads for this game at roughly minus 2. And then news came out about Goff and Gurley, and they've closed the full game at roughly minus 3.5 to minus 4. So money's pouring on the Cowboys. I think it's justified. I think you're better off taking the Cowboys on the first half, though, instead of the full game, because if you've seen Mike White play, as I described last week, and was a huge selling point for why we like the 49ers to get the win last week, Mike White, in my opinion, is one of the worst quarterbacks on an NFL roster. And trust me, you do not want your money on him later on in games. So I'll simply ride the Dak Prescott versus Blake Bortles first quarter divide, and I definitely think that Cooper Rush has shown me something over the last couple of preseason games where he has looked a little bit more tolerable than I thought he was in the past. I think that the Rams should struggle to score again. I think the Rams, after scoring 3 points in the first half against the Raiders, will be lucky to score a touchdown. And I think if the Cowboys scored at least 7 points, they should be able to get the win in this one. So the play of the day will be on the Dallas Cowboys, -3.5 in the first half, which is available at -101 at Pinnacle. Now, in terms of the rest of the betting card, there are a couple of other preseason games on. In terms of what I actually like, I would lean to New England at -1 against the Tennessee Titans. New England looked really good week 1 of preseason. They absolutely destroyed the Lions as they ended up winning by about 30 points. Meanwhile, Tennessee looked decent against Philadelphia, but I'm still not thrilled. I just don't really think they're going to care about this game. I know Mariota went 4 for 8 in the first preseason game. Logan Woodside looked really good, and Ryan Tannehill looked really good. But New England looked good also, and I think both offenses should perform well in this one once again. So I will lean to the over in that one at 42.5. It's already been bet up from 41 to 42.5. I like the quarterback depth. You saw what Brian Hoyer was able to do with New England last week, as he was great in preseason. You still have Tannehill on the bench. You still have Woodside on the bench for Tennessee. I think they should be able to score a decent amount of points. I think both teams should score at least 21 points. Lean to the over in that one. Other than that, don't really have many other thoughts. I would lean to Houston, but honestly, -4.5 is a little bit too high for me. It opened up at -3.5, up to -4.5, mostly an overreaction to Detroit's terrible showing in the first game against New England. But I will lean to nothing on that game, as I definitely don't like the current number it is at in a preseason game. So I will pass on that one. In terms of the baseball card, a lot of matchups going on today. In terms of some leans, I will actually lean to the under in the Red Sox and Orioles game at it was at 11 over on the overnight. Eduardo Rodriguez has been great so far this season for the Red Sox, as he is 13-5. He's also been unbelievable against the Orioles, as he is 2-0 with a sub-2 ERA against the Orioles. I think if this game's going to go over the 11, the Red Sox have to score at least 8 runs. And Baltimore's pitching hasn't been great, but that's a lot of pressure on Boston's offense, and I think Baltimore should score roughly 2 runs in this game. So I'll have to lean to the under on that one. Moving on, looking at the rest of the card, I will lean to the San Francisco Giants tonight, getting the job done as a small underdog price there. They won a thrilling game in 11 innings yesterday after Yastrzemski homered. They blew a couple leads, but they were able to hold on. They've won the first 2 games of the series. Arizona has definitely looked like the inferior opponent so far in the series, and Clark has been hit or miss so far this season. Webb's a relative unknown, but I think that the Diamondbacks should not be roughly a -120 favorite, and I think that there is value on the Giants in that one. So lean to the Giants. And in terms of the rest of the betting card here, I know there are some UFC fights, which I'll look at briefly in terms of this one. You have Costa versus Romero in a battle of 2, mammoth human beings. That is going to be a very entertaining fight in which these 2 guys will probably go at it. The over-under in rounds is 1.5 with a little bit of juice to the over. I'd have to lean to the under on that one, but that's a small lean. Romero is very hit or miss in terms of his energy levels. He tends to conserve energy and then goes on some barrage for about a minute and then conserves himself. So he could stretch this out, but it is only going to be 3 rounds. Costa's won a ton of fights in the first round by knockout, and Romero is also just an absolute menace at any time, and he could easily take Costa's head off at any point if he wants to. I'll lean to the under in that one. These 2 also hate each other after Romero cursed out Costa for failing his drug test, which caused their first fight to be canceled. So I wouldn't be surprised to see fireworks early and often. And I think that if you're looking at the under 1.5 rounds at +120, you're getting some decent value there. Or I think if you just take Romero or Costa by knockout, I think that you should win, because I don't think this is going to go to a decision. In terms of who I think will win the fight, money's poured in on Costa. Romero opened up a roughly -200, down to roughly -145, give or take. I'm still going to lean to Romero, though. I think Costa's a very good fighter, but Romero, you could argue that he deserved the title after beating Whitaker. I know he didn't make weight, but I mean in general in terms of the fight itself. But overall, Romero's proven that he can handle the best at their best. And Costa, I know he's done well so far in his young UFC career, but he hasn't really faced anybody of note. And I think Romero is his first true step up in class. And I think Romero will give him all that he could handle. So I will lean to Romero, and I will lean to the under in that one. Moving on, you have Diaz and Pettis. In terms of where I'm leaning towards this fight, I have no real thoughts on the fight itself. I'd have to lean to Pettis because Diaz has a 3-year layoff. However, I would have to lean to the over 2.5. I know it's available at minus 190, which is very high. But in terms of the actual fight itself, I wouldn't be surprised to see this go to a decision. Nate Diaz, as people might remember, is one of the toughest people in the UFC, as he's proven with his McGregor fights from a couple years ago. I know that he might be a little bit out of shape because he hasn't fought in so long. He looks like he's in really good shape based on the workouts and the interviews that he's done. He looks like he's definitely kept in shape during that layoff. But Diaz is also known for bleeding a lot, but never tapping out, as he has been one of the hardest UFC fighters to knock out in the history of the UFC. And he will bleed as much as he needs to, and he will simply never say die. So I think Diaz will be able to keep this fight lasting a little while. The main threat you have here is Pettis potentially getting submitted by Diaz, but Pettis is a very solid fighter on the ground with his jiu-jitsu game and his submission game. So I definitely think that won't happen. I think this fight's going to go to a decision. I think that Diaz has a shot at potentially pulling an upset, but I do not think that Pettis. I know Pettis is a wild card with his Showtime kicks and all that other stuff, but overall, I think this will go to a decision. I think Diaz is too tough. I think his chin is too solid, and I think that Pettis will be able to stifle any late Diaz submission attempts. So I will lean to the fight to go to a decision. In terms of who's going to win, I don't know. But I think it will be an entertaining fight. I think you should see some fireworks. But at the end of the day, I think it will go to the judges' scorecards. So if you want to bet on that fight going to a decision, you might get yourself a nice plus price. And in terms of the last fight, you have Cormier versus Miocic. The over-under is at 4.5 with heavy juice to the under at roughly minus 330. In terms of the actual fight itself, Cormier is the favorite, roughly minus 140. It's minus 135 on 5 dimes, though. And in terms of this match, I'll have to lean to the over, and I'll have to lean to Cormier winning. I know that Cormier was able to take Miocic's head off in, I believe it was the first round, the last time they fought. I consider that a little bit of a fluke. Cormier is one of my all-time favorite fighters. He is not a knockout specialist by any means. He likes to sit on people and win by either decision or by submission. But Miocic was a college-level wrestler. He's a very solid wrestler. I definitely think that he should be able to get the job done in terms of avoiding that first round worst-case scenario once again in the rematch. I think Miocic will be better prepared. I think Miocic will respect Cormier's power a little bit more, and I expect this to turn into a little bit of a grappling and a wrestling match, as both fighters will try to struggle for top command in the ring. But in terms of the actual number itself, 4.5 at minus 305 to the under, I think is a little bit too high. I mean, the over 4.5 is at plus 258, I should say, at 5 dimes. So I definitely think there is value on that one. In terms of some other lines, the over 2.5 is available at plus 114 at Pinnacle. I think that's a great deal. I would snag the plus 2.5 on the over in that fight. I think you should see this fight either go to a decision or go at least 3 full rounds. I think Miocic will do whatever he can to not embarrass himself like he did last time, and I think he will be a little bit more conservative in respecting Cormier's power punches. So I will lean to the over 2.5 in that one, and I will also lean to Cormier, as I think that Miocic was a tremendous champion, and he was able to defend his title multiple times. But Cormier, simply put, I just think is a better version of Miocic in the sense that Miocic has knockout power with the ability to take people down, but Cormier is probably the greatest wrestler in the history of the UFC, and he also has the ability to knock out Miocic, which he proved in his last fight. So I will lean to Cormier on the money line at minus 135, and I will also lean to the over 2.5, and I will also lean on a sprinkle to Cormier by decision. I don't know what that is, but if you look at 5 dimes, that should return you a pretty penny, as I think that fight should go the distance. So those are going to be my leans. However, the play of the day will be on the Dallas Cowboys in the first half on Pinnacle at minus 101, with the spread of being minus 3.5 on the Cowboys. Other than that, though, quick reminder for sponsor, PointsBet all on Sportsbook in New Jersey. A couple of great deals for you, up to 2 risk-free bets up to $1,000. So if you end up betting on any sport, whether it's preseason football, baseball, tennis, WNBA, anything you really want, UFC, you get your money back, which is a great promotion I wish more sportsbooks would use. Other than that, though, that's going to do it for this installment of Scott Selections here for Saturday, August 17th. Good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.